The Indianapolis Colts are going through growing pains, and on Sunday it resulted in them squandering the game and losing at home to the Philadelphia Eagles 17-16. We'll tell you all about it on today's show. Let's get to it.
You are Locked On Colts, your daily Indianapolis Colts podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey, what's up, guys? Thank you all for tuning in and making us your first listen of the day. This is your daily podcast covering your Indianapolis Colts, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's show is presented by PrizePicks. PrizePicks is daily fantasy made easy. Just pick 2 to 5 players, and if they score more or less than their PrizePicks projection, you can win up to 10 times your money on your entry. First-time users can receive a 100% instant deposit match up to $100 with promo code Locked On. That's prizepicks.com, promo code Locked On. This is Jake Arthur, and I am riding solo today. As many of you know, Zach is moving this weekend, so that's taken up his time, made him unavailable for game day today. Nonetheless, you know the two of us from horseshoehuddle.com. Before I move on, I just wanted to apologize to you guys for some of our recent production issues that we've had. Some of it is out of our control, but we're still working on it and we want to make the show better for you guys moving forward. So just trying to get some things cleared up. Please hang in there with us. We'll get better, I promise. On today's show, hopefully flawlessly, we'll dive into the Colts' 17-16 loss to the Philadelphia Eagles here at Lucas Oil Stadium. As you can see my beautiful background here, I'm in the press box. The Colts are now 4-6-1 in Jeff Saturday's second game. They got the win last week against the Las Vegas Raiders, of course. And honestly, they should have won today against the Eagles. They controlled it throughout most of the game. But of course, ultimately at the end, they just kind of gave it away. One too many mistakes. And I think that's going to be the trend. This is who they are. They're going to be a little closer to average now rather than the bad football team that we've seen them be a lot of the time this season. They should win advantageous matchups like last week against the Raiders and then probably show some youth and be unable to close out against some of these really good teams like today with the Eagles, who honestly, again, like I mentioned, the Colts should have won, but the Eagles they're one of those really good teams. They're going to take advantage of mistakes that the Colts make, and it was still a good showing nonetheless. If you're taking moral victories, today was a moral victory for the Colts. But nonetheless, in a one-score game like this, every mistake matters. Unfortunately, the Colts just aren't quite good enough yet to overcome that. They were 1 of 2 in the red zone. They got 3 field goals overall. The offense tapered off after the first drive. They got their first points on an opening drive since last Christmas. So not only just of this season, but since last year, almost a full calendar year, because it's almost Christmas season now. Of course, they got Jonathan Taylor running really strong on that first drive, 49 yards on 7 carries in the touchdown. And then after that, things just kind of clunked away, 3 straight drives that ended in punts. And then they finally got a field goal again at the end of the first half. So, they had a decent first 15, and then, it was odd. So they ran the ball very well early on. And then their second drive was a 3-and-out with 3 straight passes. So not really sure what they hoped to accomplish on that, but that wasn't it. Turnovers were a big factor. They had one of them on a drive that looked like it might have ended in points. Jonathan Taylor had a really impressive run, was driving the pile, pushing it forward. In hindsight, probably should have just gave up, gone down because he got the ball stripped. As fun as it was to see him keep the play alive and keep driving, that's ultimately what, allowed the Eagles to themselves keep ripping at the ball and get it loose and recover it. Defensively, the Colts did hold Philly to 17 points. The Eagles have been a really good offense all year, but Jalen Hurts just killed them with his legs. He had 86 yards on the ground, which led both teams the whole game. And, there were just too many times when he had all day to throw. So especially late, I thought the Colts pass rush was better in the first half, but late it just seemed like He's already a guy that can buy time with his legs. He just sat there in the pocket and had forever to scan the field. And obviously against a guy like that who's an MVP front runner, that's just not going to cut it. We'll move on here in a moment and talk to you about the offense more specifically. But first, today's episode is brought to you by Total Wine & More. This holiday season, find what you love at Total Wine & More. With so many great bottles to choose from, it's easy to find a new favorite Cabernet or Chardonnay or the perfect gifts for everyone on your list with some help from a friendly guide. And all with the confidence of knowing you found something special for the lowest price. Love what you find, only at Total Wine & More. Curbside pickup and delivery available in most areas. Visit TotalWine.com to learn more. Drink responsibly, be 21. Today's show is also brought to you by Turo, the world's largest car-sharing marketplace. With Turo, you can book any car you want, wherever you want, from a community of local hosts. Browse a huge selection of vehicles for just about any occasion or budget across the U.S., UK, Canada, and coming soon to Australia. Book a spacious SUV or minivan for a family road trip. Get a classic or luxury car for a special event, birthday, or holiday. Find an affordable economy car if you're on a budget and just need something to get you from point A to point B. Many Turo hosts can even deliver the car right to you. Every trip is backed by liability insurance. Terms and conditions and exclusions apply. Forget boring rental cars and find your drive at Turo.com. All right, looking at this offense specifically, only 284 yards total. They were 5 of 15 on third down, which is just 33%. That's one thing that kind of tells the tale of the tape. Again, every mistake matters in this, and they just were not clutch. They didn't come through on those drives, especially, again, in the second half. The Eagles knew they were going to be able to blitz successfully. They just kind of sent pressure, and it worked. Again, Colts were 1 of 2 in the red zone, just didn't get it done, settling for field goals. And they got 2 bonus drives based on takeaways that the defense gave them. Something that's been a theme pretty much all year is the defense just being put in tough spots because the offense is doing them no favors. I didn't think the offense was quite as ugly as it has been earlier in the year, but it felt a little different. But still, just 6 points, which, sure, that's great that they got points off of those turnovers, but 6 points isn't enough. Again, especially one-score game, 17-16. The Colts had a missed field goal that, in hindsight, makes a huge difference. 50-yarder. That's a difficult one to make, but still 3 points. That would have been the game. The Colts play calling wise, I thought got away from some things that were working. Jonathan Taylor, of course, rolling early on, 49 yards to just on the first drive. And they abandoned the run a little bit. And then when they came back to it, I thought a lot of their stuff was just kind of unimaginative, right up the gut, long developing carries and handoffs, a lot of counters and stuff like that. Jonathan Taylor's fast. I'd love to see them try to get him the ball on stretch plays or just outside. Just running up the gut is just not always going to be the way to do it. And as you guys remember, when Nyheim Hines was here too, he probably would have had a couple carries up the gut as well. It's something they've got to learn to change. It's just not always going to be the case. That Philly, they sensed it was coming and they were ready for it. Michael Pittman Jr. getting a lot of balls over the middle, in stride with room to get yards after the catch. I think that's money for them. It's something I would continue to lean on. He had, I think, 84 yards today, and a lot of that was picked up on plays like that, giving him opportunities to create yards on the ground afterwards. Both Pitt and Paris Campbell, great today. 6 for 75 for Pitt and 5 for 67 for Campbell. Campbell's been on a hot streak, of course. Personally, I would love to see Kylan Granson involved more. He had just 1 catch for 16 yards. He had another one that would have been a first down that was wiped out by a penalty. We'll get to the stuff about penalties here in a minute. So the offensive line, I thought the veterans did fine today. Quentin Nelson, Ryan Kelly, Braden Smith. But the problem positions, which has been an issue all year, left tackle Bernard Ryman and right guard Will Fries. Now, I'll start by saying I think they are the right guys for the job. I think the Colts do have their correct starting 5 right now. But this was one of those days where those young guys just really took their lumps. It was a growing pains day, like I mentioned at the top. Both players, I think, had at least 2 penalties. Fries might have had 3, and Bernhard Raimann gave up at least 2 sacks, and some of them at the worst time. He had 1 each in the Colts' final 2 drives. There was one where the Colts were just knocking at the door down here at Philly's 5-yard line. I think it was on third down. Hassan Reddick just came through and blew Matt Ryan up, and he made a nice move, but he got right past Raimann. And then on the Colts' final drive, with under a minute remaining on 3rd down, Brandon Graham just bullied Bernhard Raimann back into Matt Ryan and got him again. So luckily, Raimann is one of those guys. He's going to study the tape. He's going to do everything he can to get better. But this was definitely one of those games he's going to need to learn from. Fries, physically, I didn't feel like he had like a terrible game in his matchups. It was just really the penalties. That stuff's always going to kill you. And it was on both sides. I'm not going to mention like the refereeing was fine. The Colts only had 1 more penalty than the Eagles. The Eagles got called a bunch in the first half. So as far as all that goes, that was called pretty evenly. So with that said, before we move on to the defense, let me tell you about our pals over at PrizePicks. Looking at Monday Night Football for Monday night, 49ers running back Christian McCaffrey is currently set at 65.5 rushing yards and 35.5 receiving yards. With Elijah Mitchell coming back in the lineup off of IR, and he's got a significant role again, apparently, I'm super curious about that line for CMC because the 49ers seem like one of those teams that would just go completely powered by their running back. So I'm intrigued by that bet personally. Nonetheless, I know I'll hop on PrizePicks on my phone before game time and just go to town making some picks. It's super easy. You just take 2 to 5 players, and if they score more or less than their stat projections, then you can win up to 10 times your money on any entry. There's no competing against other people. It's just you against the projections that are available. PrizePicks offers projections on pretty much any sport under the sun, and entries can be made in 60 seconds or less. It's that easy, and their withdrawals are both fast and safe. PrizePicks is currently operational in over 30 states and Canada too. So wherever you're located, I know those are football hotbeds. So, you'll be able to participate, I'm sure. Download the PrizePicks app or go to prizepicks.com to sign up and play daily fantasy sports. First-time users can receive a 100% instant deposit match up to $100 with promo code Locked On. If you deposit $100, PrizePicks will give you $100. If you deposit $50, PrizePicks will give you $50. Don't forget to enter promo code Locked On at sign up for an instant deposit match up to $100. All right, so looking at the Colts defense, I didn't really have any big gripes about them. They held the Eagles to 17 points. That's great. They did have a couple. So they had some big issues that wound up playing a significant role down the stretch. Number one, Jalen Hurts, rushing for about 85 yards. He had some really untimely runs for the Colts defense. Had a 28-yarder at one point, and he scored the go-ahead touchdown near the end of the game. I don't know what the Eagles saw. They must have known it was coming on the Colts, but they opened just a wide hole right up the middle. There was no Colts anywhere in sight, and he just strolled right in. He could have literally rolled in. So he really commanded things there. And that's always kind of backbreaking when the quarterback you're playing can pick up yardage like that. It's always tough. But again, I mentioned earlier that he had a lot of time to throw as well, especially in the second half. So no matter how many points you hold him to, that's always going to be hard to lose or hard to win. And no surprise, defensively, DeForest Buckner and Grover Stewart were awesome. They were all over the place, making plays behind the line of scrimmage. Outside of Hurts, I thought the Colts did well against the run. Miles Sanders wasn't much of a factor. And if it weren't for their quarterback having some wide open lanes to run on the outside and stuff, if it was a traditional running game, I think the Colts did well. This was Yannick Ngakwe's biggest performance so far. I mentioned in my post-game piece that he'd gotten really quietly to 5 sacks on the season. I think a lot of us had expected more, or at least more consistency to this point. He had 1.5 sacks today against the Eagles. I thought he was consistently in the backfield, flushing Jalen Hurts either up or out of the pocket. He affected the pocket multiple times. Dio Dangbo was out there a bit. I saw some nice things from him. He still needs the developmental snaps. He's not ready to be a starter yet, of course, but we've said all year that he's just one of those guys that needs to continue getting those snaps in order to develop. I thought the Eagles did a good job of pulling the Colts linebackers away from the middle of the field, particularly on that Hurts touchdown run late in the game. There was no one there to be found. None of the linebackers were there. I thought the linebackers played fast, but again, the Eagles had a good game plan to counter how the Colts linebackers play and just kind of space the whole field out and give Hurts room to run. One guy that's taken his lumps throughout the year, we've had some things to say about him lately. Brandon Faison, I actually thought he did pretty well. There was a play where Jalen Hurts' first downfield shot of the game, he went deep down the right side to Devontae Smith, who is much faster than Faison, but Faison just kind of kept him to the boundary like he should have, and just out positioned him for it and just kept Smith away from the ball, and that's really all you can ask from a guy like that. Well, I think that is it for us. Zach will be back with us soon, hopefully. Check back with us this week as we tackle the topics that all you guys are talking about. You guys hit us up on Twitter, of course. We know what you guys want to hear. And we'll get ready for this Monday Night Football game against the Pittsburgh Steelers next week. Follow Locked On Colts at Jake Arthur NFL and at Zach Hicks 2 on Twitter. Also subscribe to both shows on YouTube and wherever you listen to podcasts. We love your ratings and reviews as well. That's how we move up the charts, so that would be greatly appreciated. Thank you for making us your first listen of the day. For your next listen, check out the Locked On Sports Today podcast. It's the biggest stories of the day, plus instant reactions, big game recaps, and the take of the day. Available on the Odyssey app, YouTube, and wherever you get your podcasts. We'll see you guys this week.